Hi everybody, I'm just sharing this article, this programme here from Rachel Maddow, and I know a lot of people give her a lot of stick and MSNBC, controlled mainstream media, but what Maddow is sharing here, what Rachel Maddow is sharing here, is very, very important, and I think it speaks volumes about the fact that she has been permitted to state what she's stating here. And I think that is because the establishment now feels it has so much control that, yes, people like Rachel Maddow can speak out, various senior officials can speak out, but nothing ultimately is going to change. They have the power and they're going to continue to abuse it in order to remove, to dismantle America's democracy. The same's happening in the UK. Europe's under attack, every nation from within now as well. Because, what we are witnessing is a global takeover by really what amounts to a criminal cabal. And we know at the head of it all are the Zionist government of Israel. Now, I've got nothing against Israel as a nation of people, but I am very concerned about the leadership in Israel, because actually my own leadership now, the leadership of Britain, is starting to mirror the leadership of Israel, and also the leadership of America is mirroring the leadership of Israel. And we know that Netanyahu is very close friends with Boris Johnson. Immediately the day after Johnson unlawfully prorogued Parliament, Netanyahu flew over to Britain the next day to visit Johnson at number 10. And we know that while Trump was being impeached by the Senate, they were having the impeachment trial, he was in Israel handing over Palestine and Palestinian resources and territories to Israel. Now, as I say, I am not against Israel. I don't even support boycotts against Israel because, I don't support sanctions. You see, I don't support sanctions, and I know I don't like the idea of innocent people and children of a society being deprived of things they need because of the actions of the kind of people who aren't going to be affected by the boycotts anyway. So, that's my take on it. So, and I'm explaining this because recently YouTube took a video of mine down because I spoke out. I used my freedom of speech and expression to express my outrage against this Israeli government, and in particular against Netanyahu, but apparently that's hate speech and I was inciting hatred. Now, I'm not inciting hatred. What I am trying to do is to raise awareness about the severity and seriousness of the situation that we now face. And it's highlighted here when we've got the Israeli government that's already being tried by the International Criminal Court for crimes against humanity. They're stating, audaciously stating publicly now, that Israel can legislate anywhere in the world that it is entitled to violate the sovereignty of foreign countries, and that it is allowed to ignore the directives of international law in any field it desires. So, basically they're saying they have powers to send their agents and operatives in any nation and do whatever they want within that nation, ignore the laws of that nation, the rights of the people, ignore the directives of international law. So what are they? Were they involved in rigging elections in Britain, in America? Are they funding terrorist groups that will further their interests by persecuting left-wing Jews of America and Britain, which Trump has stated are basically traitors? You know, this idea, apparently, if you're Jew, then you've got to be a far-right extremist. Otherwise, expect to be attacked by the far-right extremists. I mean, this is very serious and very alarming. And now Rachel Maddow here is sharing information that is explaining, you know, how easy it is for a state to slip from a democracy into a totalitarian, dictatorial, fascist state. And that is exactly what is happening in Britain now. We've got Boris Johnson. We very strongly, lawfully suspect that his landslide win, it was due to crime and corruption, rigging. Okay. And here we have Donald Trump, also very strongly suspected that there was corruption, crime and corruption involved in his election win. And not much has been mentioned, but Greg Palast has repeatedly exposed all the information showing that millions of American citizens were denied their lawful right to vote in the 2016 US general election. Now, as Maddow states here, she said, you know, the alarm bells are ringing, the alarm bells are ringing. We've heard them, so now what are we going to do? And then she gives some examples, quotes from other people who have alerted society about how easy the rise of far-right extremism can be, and how it operates by stealth. It moves in by stealth. It normalises all kinds of terrible things. Like, for example, in Britain, it has been normalised to murder people through an economic policy. 200,000 people are dead. Hardly anybody's batted an eyelid about it, really, apart to moan and grumble on Twitter. There's been no real moves from the top, like there is now in America, to stand against this. You know, the most we've witnessed was a few politicians and lawyers getting together when Johnson unlawfully prorogued Parliament, but nothing before that and nothing after that. And now we've got Trump in America, who, him and his Attorney General working in cahoots to demolish America's law, their institutions. You know, the fact that Vinderman was sacked from his job as a punishment, which is unlawful. That alone is unlawful. And never mind also sacking his brother, who had nothing to do with giving evidence against Trump at Congress. And then, you know, against other people, and the fact that top USA prosecutors have had to resign, felt forced to resign because of the interference. This is really serious. So when we've already heard it from the leader of Israel and their government that they are at liberty to break the law in every nation and international law, whatever laws they desire to break, to further their interests. And then we look at the people who are serving Israel government's interests, because I wouldn't say they're serving Israel's interests, because they're not. They are putting Israel at risk as more people witness this kind of stuff from the Zionist party now controlling Israel, and then start to cross-transfer their anger about that onto regular Jewish people who've got nothing to do with it and living in their communities. I mean, we've witnessed the same with Muslim people, you know, so-called moderate Muslims, actually true Muslims, who live peaceful, compassionate lives, get attacked and judged because of the antics of ISIS extremists, who we find out ultimately often are being recruited and trained by American and Israeli and UK intelligence. So, you know, this is a real attack and it is a real threat. And I refuse to be judged anti-Semitic for focusing on that. And I am not inciting hatred, I am inciting righteous action. You see, righteous action. And that's why I prepared this. You know, it's a legal proposal for what we want to do in Britain in order to address this rise of fascism, okay? And as Rachel Maddow rightly says, you know, what are we going to do about it? And we have to support the people who stand up. And how our institutions will collapse under this weight of tyranny, because that is what we are dealing with right now. Absolute, total tyranny from above. Basically, it's a revolt against we the people and everything that we have established by way of our social rights and all of the technology and other advances that have arisen through our democracies and education systems. They wish to take control of all of it, but at the same time trample on the very democracy and rights that gave rise to that technology in the first place. They want to send us back to serfdom. Basically, we're looking at, you know, a feudal system of corporate communism inflicted on the majority of people on Earth, and then meanwhile the very rich elite get to enjoy socialism among themselves. And they live off state benefits paid for by the masses of people, which they're doing right now. They're doing right now. It's just that people haven't, until recently, woken up to it. Now, this brings me to the Senate, you see, because the Senate have failed to uphold their oath of office. They've refused to impeach Trump, even though they were fully aware of the facts against him and accepted that, yes, he was guilty. But they failed to impeach him, and they have left him free now to commit further damage against the people of America, and the people working for the institutions in America are right now most at risk and in the firing line. So because of the Senate failing to honour their oath of office and uphold the Constitution, and instead stand by their partisan directives, they've left America at risk. They are now directly responsible for a crime that has been committed against Vinderman and his brother now. At least them. And then all the people who've now had to write letters of resignation and pull out from the prosecution against what's his name? Who cares, really? Another Trump mobster, basically. So what can America do then to these senators who have broken the law? They have abused their positions of power to ignore their oath of office and have left the American people at risk, and American people have been harmed and are in danger of suffering further harm as a direct result. So what can be done now against these senators? Well, they can't be impeached. They can be censured or expelled. But that will take 2/3 of a vote from the House, of which the opposition, or rather the people who stand with the Constitution or who uphold their oaths of office, well, they don't control 2/3 of the Senate. So that is a very dangerous situation, and this situation has exposed a loophole in the American democratic system, as indeed Britain's system has proven to be full of them as well. But at least America does have a written constitution. It cannot be denied that these senators have broken their oath of office, and as a direct result, a criminal president has been permitted to commit yet more crimes and put more people at risk. More crimes against democracy and against the state and against the institutions that uphold the democracy of America. But nothing can be done, apparently. So that is a loophole, and that is where criminals take advantage. That's what they do. They find loopholes in the law that allow them to commit crime. That's why they employ their top lawyers to find these loopholes so that they can commit crime and make the loopholes even bigger until eventually, through their crimes, they get enough power to actually destroy the laws that they had to search for loopholes in the first place. And then it's gloves off and it's a free-for-all, and women and children, poor people, everybody actually is at serious risk. I mean serious risk. And there are things that cannot be tolerated. There are things in this world that we as individual nations and as people within those nations just cannot tolerate. And that is the point. That's why even the Constitution allows the people the right and actually duty to overturn powers of tyranny. You see, when the Senate has proven useless, the Senate is that corrupt that it has broken their oath of office by majority and failed to protect the American people. That is really serious. So it will take, as the people of France have long known, unite people and come out in protest. Not rioting, but come out in protest and demand action. Sue the Senate. Bring a class action against all of those senators for failing to uphold their oaths of office. Because it is going to be down to the people when the Senate is proven that corrupt that they can't even honour the Constitution. Then it is up to the people to honour the Constitution and demand that the institutions of power hold those senators to account. Because already we're looking at the start of the damages. And now with these powers, apparently they're above the law. Well, what's to stop them from rigging an election and giving Trump a landslide like has happened in Britain? And then what are people going to do? Oh, well, he's won an election. This is democracy. Democracy has chosen fascism and to demolish the law and, live by Luciferian law of right equals might equals right to do as thy will. And, it goes on from there. Now, just to end this, I'm going to juxtapose this with something that arrived on my Twitter feed today. Right, so it's this little girl here, and she had a tantrum at school. So they called in the authorities. The officers themselves are unconvinced that the girl's a threat. Because apparently she's a danger to herself and others. And not even her mother. Not even her mother was informed. Good deal. I appreciate that, Miss Nadia. No, you're not going to jail. You will not go to jail.
That's not what we do. You're not no bad person. You're not going to jail.
Alright, Naughty, you're going to have a seat right there, okay? Alright, watch your hands and your feet there.
I think they may have agitated her a little bit. She's fine. She is fine. There's nothing wrong with her.
Alright, let me help again.
Okay.
So that's what's happening to little children in schools who have a tantrum in a country that is governed by Donald Trump. How can that be? How can that be? That juxtaposition exposes the reality, the severity of the imbalance, the severe, dangerous, deadly imbalance that is operating in our worlds today, and how unfair and uncivil and unlawful and insane it is. And we do need to address this insanity. And we need to use, as Rachel Maddow rightly explains, we need to use our institutions and stand by them and demand that they work for us. Because rights and laws are like muscles, and fail to use them and we will grow weak until we have no rights and laws to use. And that is what is about to happen in Britain. We are in a nation that is being governed by a government that wants to scrap our human rights. That is how serious it is. And people are still not woken up to it. And that's what the system's playing on, is that people are just going to, seriously, one day people are going to wake up and it'll be too late. So I sincerely hope that I'm going to leave the links to this and also my proposal here. And please check them out. Listen to what Rachel Maddow has to say. Read this link. Read this and share it, because we all need to talk about this. You know, this idea that a nation as powerful as Israel, that's controlling most of the world's money supply, can turn around and say that they have the freedom and right to break every law in every land. That is a terrorist threat from a country that, according to all the evidence, is also an illegal nuclear power. Please think about it, people, and God bless and love to everybody. And like I say, don't hate, get righteous, get with the law, stand up for your rights. Okay, it's a waste of time standing against. Stand up for your rights.